Hey everyone, Rachel here with Things We Wear, and today I'm going to talk a little more about grading and some ideas I've been thinking about with grading and how it could affect the way we discuss sizing and how to make things fit people better across a lot of sizes. So in general, I actually get a fair amount of freelance work working on plus size patterns. And a lot of that is just because a lot of pattern makers, tech designers just don't have a lot of experience with plus for whatever reason. Um, I would say you are seeing more inclusive sizing on the market, but a lot of that inclusive sizing is a simple grade up. They're just adding the sizes on top of existing sizes. They're not actually making a new pattern or fitting on a live model. So I think that there is kind of a lack of knowledge there because not a lot of people have had the experience of working on plus size or of working on a variety of sizes. So I wanted to talk about this in relation to the way we talk about grading. A lot of times when we talk about grading, we're looking at gradedness and we're talking about like, oh, what should this shape be here? You'll see this I don't love because my bust is growing more than my sweep, which is a little weird. So I would want to fix that. Oh yeah, I think I was showing a point here. This is from my previous example when we were discussing grading. But a lot of times when we talk about grading, it's very shape-based. It's very maintaining proportions or data-driven. So it's like, okay, well, we can look at ASTM data and say that busts are growing, 2 inches per size or whatever it is that we've decided we want to break down human bodies into. The reality is that's sort of ideal thinking, right? Because bodies are all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and there's not really like one way to do it. It's just this is the way we've been doing it for a while now. So I know a lot of that data-driven grading, analyzation. Of course, it's important. It's important that we understand the data of the customer set that we're working with. If you know your customer age range and demographic, you can have some idea of what kind of bodies you're trying to fit, which is, of course, helpful. But I think what people get confused about grading, and I don't know if I've specifically discussed this or not, is I actually do believe that grading is also an artistic decision in the same way that pattern making is an artistic decision. Let's say we have, I'm going to pull in Chloe here. Oh, for some reason it closed. Okay, we'll try this again. Okay, it looks like my Chloe needs to update, but I can still talk about it while we discuss this example pattern. And of course, this is just an example and not like a good trued up pattern. I think I just drafted this to make some points here. But let's say we have a body, and I'll pull in, this is Girlfriend Collective. I was just checking them out. All right, so this is her body, right? Let's say we were able to draw on lines on her body and then peel away a paper pattern, a flat pattern for her. So it would be the perfect body conscious pattern for her, well balanced. And that's important. Even getting balanced correctly on body conscious on close to the body items is important because otherwise you'll get drag lines. It maybe won't look perfect. So it is important. Balance is important on all types of fit. But the thing about most clothing is that most clothing is not 100% body conscious. So maybe there's things like the Girlfriend Collective who sell a lot of leggings and bras, and this kind of stuff is going to be very close to the body. But what is still up to a stylistic choice are all the seam lines and the way that it grows with the body. So you still have to make a decision about where that seam line goes. Oh, it keeps switching as I click on it, which is annoying. Here we go. So it's not like, it's still an artistic decision to make how the seaming is adjusted as you change sizes. So even in something that is next to body, there are still artistic changes artistic decisions that you need to make regarding the style to maintain it. Whoop. Okay, so now let's say we're looking at a brand like Everlane here. Everlane sells a lot more clothing that is pretty far off the body, right? It's a little bit more stylized in fit. And what that means to me is that every size, it's not going to be a straightforward, again, a straightforward equation as to how to fit every size. Let's look at something here. Do they have extended? They're not showing this on different sizes. Okay, just on the size small. But as you can see, let's take this. So she's probably like a size 2, right? She could be a 4, but she looks pretty small. Basically, this pant is fitting her close to body in the waist area, and then it has a nice drape. I don't like that she's standing in that weird position. It just makes the pants look weird. What is she doing? It has a nice drape, and then it's going to be skimming the body and hanging straight down. And not to say grading couldn't be used to create these grades. Oh, I'm sorry, my stomach is growling. But it is still a stylized choice. So if we took this pattern and made it bigger for each size, like let's say this is 2, now we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sizes. The leg opening, do you think the leg opening needs to be as dramatically large on the size 16 as it is on the hip? So the point of what I'm saying there is that if we simply looked at the way the body graded, at the way the physical body grades, it maybe wouldn't inform us how the clothing should grade, because this is still a stylistic choice that we're trying to make in order to give her something that's flattering. In this case, it's accentuating a small waist because the rest of the garment is fuller. So as you either go down in size or up in size, you have to make decisions that will maintain that design aesthetic up and down. So hopefully that kind of makes sense, that there isn't a specific, I would say in my head, maybe I know, oh, I think the leg opening, maybe I'd want it to grade like 1/8 of an inch or something. But when we're looking at a pattern, that might be kind of confusing, because on a wide leg pant, let's say this is a wide leg pant. So if this was out here and this was out here, say it looks something like that. As we went up in size, so right now it's kind of like a straight, it's pretty straight from the hip down. As we go up in size, this is going to get more big compared to this. So that means that you're actually going to have a tapered shape as you get on the larger size. On the body, it's not going to look as tapered. I don't know why I have that extra point there. This is weird. On the body, it's not going to look as tapered, but on the pattern it will, because you're not going to grow all the parts the same amount, because of course you need to review it on a human form and make a decision that is right for the style. So where am I going with all this? I do have a point. So here's kind of my idea and thoughts about grading as I've kind of been working on plus size and working in the industry for a while, is that I think the problem a lot of people run into is that we over obsess about the numeric numbers. We're thinking a lot about like, oh, the armhole needs to drop 1/4 inch to maintain a good shape, and the bust has to grow 2 inches. Sure, maybe it does. But I think at the end of the day, we're losing sight of the point of this, which is that it looks good on a human body, right? So I think for a new company or anyone who's trying to reestablish their fit and make it look good on an extended size range or on more body types, what I would say is you probably need to narrow down your body type, right? You need to pick a person or a few people to be your full size run. So you need a size small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, etc. You need physical forms of those bodies. They could be virtual forms. You could use Clo or Browseware or whatever, but you do need a physical form that you're trying to emulate. I would say a human body is better than a 3D body, although I do think there's a lot that you could do with 3D to establish some sort of consistency. But once you have that, then I would say your next step is making the style in every size And let's say you're a brand like Everlane and you have kind of a pretty, like they have a pretty consistent styling, right? Their clothes are not super close to body. They tend to be a little more relaxed and boxy. So I would pick a few basic silhouettes. Like I might pick this pant and like this track pant. This seems pretty typical for them, kind of relaxed, not a lot going on with it. And then I would make it in every size for your size run and make it fit those body types, and then derive your grading backwards from there. So rather than going from data up, rather than looking at a million numbers and trying to decide if the thigh grade should be 5/8 or 3/4 or a ½ inch or whatever it is, actually fit it on a human. Maybe you could start with a size, your base size plus like a 16, fit it on that 16 human body, and then derive the grading backwards, because you're not going to know based on data alone what the thigh grade should be. Yes, the data is going to inform you that it will physically fit over their thigh, but will it inform you if it looks good? That's the thing that you're not going to get information on. So I think that these things, it's important to have both. I would have the data, but I would also then you kind of need to narrow down your body type. When you're looking at a size 16, a lot of people don't always discuss this, and maybe this is sort of something that I think is left out of the discussion when we talk about plus sizes, is that as you go up or down in size, the places of fullness might be different. So if you're an athletic brand who's aiming clothing at people who are exercising a lot, it is more likely that if they have fullness in their hip area, it's going to be a backwards projection. So rather than having fullness coming out on her sides of her body, it's going to be probably more pronounced in the back, which is going to affect the balance of the pant and also how the grading is going to work. In addition to all of this, it's going to affect how the rise saddle is going to grade. So one thing that for some reason is never discussed in pants, I know this is a terrible pattern, so don't. I should have cleaned this up before but it's good for just looking at. So one thing that is like never discussed really when we talk about pants, but is crucially important, is this width here, is the, I call it the reach, the saddle width. People have different terms for it. But basically, how much space do you have in between your inseam, your crotch point? And then as you go up in size, how much more do you need? So when you get to that size 16, if she's, let's say she's a size 16, but she's a really athletic size 16. Now in traditional grading, you might have the front thigh and the back thigh grading equally. But if you're aiming this to be on an athletic body type, you might see the back thigh grade a little more. And let me show you what I mean here, so that you're getting more reach in the back if she has a bigger projection here. So this is something that I really don't think you can get that kind of, you can't get that kind of data from numbers alone, because this data doesn't exist. We don't have data on thigh rise reach or saddle depth. Maybe we should, and that would be really helpful. It's a hard measurement to get, and maybe that's something we can start doing with when we start to do body scan technology. It's still kind of coming along, but I think this is an area that is often neglected being spoken about. Usually we just talk about hip and thigh, and we don't really talk about the rise shape, but the rise shape is crucially important to how pants fit, and without it, your pants aren't going to fit. So it's pretty important. So along these lines, I do want to talk about what I think helps when you see a brand that's doing sizing right, when you see that every size fits well, there is something crucial that they're doing, and I think it's important that we call this out. So when I first started in the industry in 2008, I started pre the crash of Lehman Brothers. So it was when there was still a fair amount of investment in pattern makers and tech designers. They were fairly well regarded in the industry, fairly well paid, and treated well within within departments. And what that meant is that they were given space and time to do their work in a really good way. So in pre-2008 era, and this maybe was specific to the company I was working for, but I get the feeling this was like this, when I talk to other people, it sounds like this is kind of a theme, is that the way I worked is every single style that I did, I saw a full size run of it. So even though I did a lot of repetitive styles, I did a lot of, at the time I was working on men's knit tops, a various range of them. So I had t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies and that kind of stuff. So it was fairly consistent in product type. And I did have grading that I was supposed to follow. But the point of the full size run is that we would fit every single size on a model with design, and we would cross-check to make sure that things look consistent on all sizes. So let's say with this coat, for example, if we looked at it on the extra large, we might notice like, oh, hey, actually the collar looks a little bit oversized on the extra large and a little bit clownish. We might also notice that maybe the length got too long, or the sleeve length got too long, or the across shoulder is too wide. Maybe there's some details that could be enhanced, like maybe there's maybe the collar looks too small on the size extra large. There's little things that are really specific to styling. You can have ideas in your head about what the graded spec measurements should be as a company, like, oh, we grade our forearms 3/8 per size, or we grade our belt total lengths, 2 inches per size. That's great to have, but you still need to put it on a body because each style is different, each fabrication is different, so you don't really know how it's going to react exactly until you see it on a physical human body, or at least in physical form. I really don't know that there's a way around that in my mind. I think that creating something, if you're making something in size small and then it's getting graded up to 2XL and you are never seeing it, never putting it on a human body, and then we're selling it in stores, no wonder it doesn't fit anybody. This is an important step in the process. So this was my experience pre the crash of everything. Post the crash of everything, I saw a lot of companies switch to eliminating full size runs. Maybe you would do a jump size run, so you'd see a size small and let's say large or something like that before you approved for bulk. But you kind of missed out on some of those in-between sizes. And then I saw, as we've moved forward in time, that just the total elimination of all of those sizes. I don't think I know anyone who looks at every size anymore. And that is really telling in the way we fit things. At the same time, like I said, a lot of people hire me to do plus size patterns. And there's a reason for that. It's because there aren't a lot of people or tech designers, pattern makers who get practice looking at plus size on a physical form. And that is a huge hole in our industry. If we're not looking at it on a human form, how is it fitting a human form, right? There's no magic way to create these styles. And I think that there's a perception that with enough data, we can predict what everything should be. We can predict that this pant should look a certain way on a size extra large. Let's see if they'll show us extra large. Nope, they don't. And data can help us get there. But as I'm trying to say again and again, the pattern making and grading is an artistic decision. So it's not just data. It's not purely science. It is also creative decision where you're taking a design and you're trying to execute it in every size. So it's kind of akin to being, let's say, a furniture designer or an architect. Yes, you have necessities. You have to make a door that people can walk through, right? You have to make a chair that can be sat in, that is big enough for a person to sit in. But there's a lot of room for other decisions to be made that affect the way that building looks or the piece of furniture looks, that it can still be usable on either end. It can still be a beautiful chair, whether it's very oversized or more petite in size. but it affects the way it looks, it affects the way it functions. And those decisions have to be made in conjunction with each other. It is not just a numbers game. So I hope that point is through. So I think that's the entirety of my rant here. I want to see if we can see some more plus photos. There's been a lot of talk about showing different sizes in photography on websites. I'm not fully seeing it yet. I'm also hearing about this idea of doing virtual fittings, and I haven't really seen that yet. I will say, so there's two halves to it, and I think this is where people are getting confused. Is number one, it's great to see things on different types of bodies. I'm not arguing with that. This is nice. Look, I feel like I'm seeing a wide variety of body types here. She looks a little more petite, a little more curvy. This person in that other photo, these are different people. This looks more like a size medium large. So it is great that we are seeing this more diversity of body shapes. I think that's a really huge step forward when we're shopping for clothing. But I will say what we are missing is like, what size is this? So sure, it's nice to see a different size, but we're not being told what size this person is and how maybe our body compares to this person. That would maybe be helpful. So I think that's number one. Oh, here we go. She's 5'8", she's a size 6, and she wears a small. Okay, so this is a small on a person who's 5'8" and a size 6. Okay, that's really handy. Great to know. I think the thing when we talk about virtual try-on, and this has to do with grading as well, is that I think in general, to make it work, we need more information about the models that we're seeing. It is nice that we're seeing more models here, and I won't knock that. That's really great. This time I'm not seeing who this is and what size she's wearing. Oh, there she is. She's a 12-14. So what would actually be helpful is if we had measurements for the models that we're seeing. Like, sure, she's a 12-14, but what does that mean? Very few people are the same size on the bottom and on the top. Most people are only that size in one or two parts of their body, and that dictates everything else. So for the most part, for women, their size is dictated by their bust and their hip, because those are the biggest measurements and they have to size to that measurement. But the rest of their body might not be sized that way. So she maybe has a smaller waist than a size 14. And actually it looks like her legs are pretty small. Maybe her calves are less than what's typical for a size 14, for example. It would be really helpful to have a full outline of her measurements. And then if you as a customer, let's say you had a body scan or you were able to get your measurements professionally done, you could see right next to her, oh, these are your measurements. And maybe you could see like an outline of the differences in your body. Like, oh, your calf is a little bigger or something like that. Or your torso is a little longer. Virtual try-on, I'm not really sure how that's going to work. I don't know that we quite have the technology for that yet. Maybe we're getting close. Yeah, it's definitely a challenging, tricky area, and I think it's a little bit out into the future. But until then, I think having more information on the models that we're seeing so that we can make educated guesses. It would also be helpful if we really did start talking about rise depth and rise height in separate measures. Talking about rises as a total measurement, like front rise being whatever, 9.5 or 10, which is usually the measurement that's called out. If you do see a measurement, sometimes they'll say like, oh, front rise depth, 9 3/4. Yeah, that is information, but it's not super helpful because it's a total length around a curve, which is sort of confusing, and who really knows that? It would be a lot more helpful to know like, oh, this has what your depth is or what your height is, or that it's going to be above the belly button. Whatever it is, I think giving a total measurement, it's kind of a confusing way of talking about it. It would be, I'm trying to think of an akin. Yeah, I can't think of anything quite like it, but it's to me, we're losing parts of that data, and we really should be talking about this depth here, because this is a really important part of the body. And for some people, that depth is more extreme in the front or in the back. And so for some people, it's less. And so even though those people might be a size 14, they're going to experience a pretty different fit because their rise depth is not as dramatic as someone else. So that can really change the balance, the fit, the drag lines. So sure, you could see it, quote unquote, on your body, but it's not going to show you how it will actually fit you. It might show you if this style will be flattering on you-ish, but it's not really going to answer all of the questions. So where am I going with all this? What I'm saying is, if we want things to fit people, more people better, we need to start treating pattern makers and tech designers with the same respect that they got pre-2008. We need to give them time and space to do their job in a good way. In my experience, tech designers are just slammed with work. They're overwhelmed. They're barely keeping their heads above water. And at this point, being paid like not even a living wage in the very high cost of living cities that they have to live in to work. So it's getting to the point when I think a lot of experienced tech designers and pattern makers are leaving the industry. And the ones that are staying maybe don't always have the pattern making background to be able to, or the experience to do the work that really needs to be done, which is evaluate every size, make artistic and technical decisions for the grading. A lot of tech designers aren't even allowed to touch grading, and I think that that's a huge miss. There's a reason that we're human beings evaluating styles and not just algorithms or robots. The reason is because you need that artistic eye to look at every size, to look at the grade and say, you know what, yes, this is our standard for knee, but on this style, maybe that knee needs to be tweaked a little bit because it's not maintaining a good shape when we look at the extreme ends of the size run. So this is really the point, I think, of tech designers and pattern makers working on styles and reviewing a full size run. But in order for them to do that, and in order for more sizes to fit more people better, we need to compensate them and allow them to work on the styles in a little more time. What does that mean for customers? Well, that means that maybe your clothing is going to cost a little more. It might mean that, if you've read that data, that we spend less money on clothing than we did in the past, and yet we own more clothing. Yeah, there's a reason. I would say there's also been a shift in the money allocation in a lot of companies. It seems like it used to be that that people who worked on product in a technical way, like a pattern maker or tech designer, were compensated for their work. That money has now seemed to shift over to more of the business side. And the business side people were always well compensated, but it feels that it's really swung in that direction. And I think part of that is the people on that side of the equation have really driven home this idea that if we just get as much data as possible, we start these startup companies that are telling us that like magically with data, we're going to solve every fit issue in the world. And so there's been a swing away from this. And I think everyone wants to hear that there's some magic pill that's going to make everything better. But the reality is that good things come from hard work, and that there is no way to cheat the hard work. I think I would say it's kind of like akin to, let's say, a surgeon, right? A surgeon is a highly skilled individual. There's a lot of data and science that we can put into helping surgeons do training, helping surgeons do surgery. Like now, surgery doesn't have to be always so invasive. They can do it with cameras. They can do it maybe even virtually. There's a lot of new technology that goes into surgery. But at the end of the day, how is good surgery performed? It's performed by people who are experienced, who do this every day and know what they're doing. And they make tiny decisions that impact the surgery. There is no script that tells you exactly how every surgery should go. Oh, maybe there are scripts that tell you, oh, this is the procedure, this is what we're expecting. But once they get in there, they need to make decisions based on that training in order to create a good outcome for the patient. And the same thing for a pattern maker tech designer is that, yes, there are scripts, yes, there are standards, but at the end of the day, the point of them being a human being is that they're going to make those tiny decisions that make a big impact on the outcome of the product. So it's just not something that you can replace with computers. And if you do, and I think they're trying to, you're going to end up with a lot of product that doesn't fit anybody, with a lot of product on the discount bins. I still hear a lot of companies talk about how nothing fits on extreme sizes, and there's a reason, right? And there's a simple way to fix it, but unfortunately, I think it's not what everyone wants to hear. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful to you guys out there. Just kind of chatting about grading, hearing me talk a lot about it. But again, if you're a new brand and you're trying to establish your grade rules, my best advice would be get a good pattern for the top end size, or maybe pick a few sizes. So let's say your base size is small, then you can also do large and then 2XL. Make patterns for those sizes. Pick your body type. Is your person athletic? Are they in their early 20s? Are they in their late 40s? Figure out what that body type is and then cater to that body type, because the reality is you're never going to be able to make something for everyone. And yes, you can be considerate about everyone, but it's important to have an idea of what you're aiming towards, because then you can actually have something that fits that person. And you can cross-check it on other body types. You can make adjustments so that it fits a wider range of bodies, but start there, start at what your target demographic is, and then work backwards. If you know that that thigh needs to be 2 inches larger on the next size, then that's your grade right there. So it's pretty straightforward. I wouldn't overspend time on, I think you should use data to back up your findings and not the other way around. I think sometimes we use data too much, and there's a middle ground, right? I can look at these shapes for days and I can say, oh, I love that armhole shape. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't fit a human being's armhole, why do I care what the shape looks like? We need it to fit a person and not just be a paper pattern. And I think we often lose sight of that really important detail. All right, so I'm going to end here. Leave me your questions in the comments below. If you'd like to join my Patreon, I will leave a comment or a link there below. And I will be doing some more training videos soon. I know this was kind of a little bit open-ended, but it did feel like a topic that needed to be addressed. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I just wanted to put it out there. So hope to see you in my next video, and thank you again for being here. Bye.